Hey guys, you got Crave here, and let's take a look at the journey of Cal Kestis in Jedi Fallen Order. I really had to replay this as the sequel Jedi Survivor is coming out next month. The TLDR is that this was one of the very best games of 2019 and proved a point that single-player games are great options as long as enough care is given to the title. Thanks to the developer Respawn, it made bank back then, which is why we have the upcoming sequel. So let's take a look at Fallen Order from a visual, story, and gameplay perspective. Whether you played Fallen Order on previous gen or PC, the game was brought together very well. It looked better on PC depending on your hardware, but overall it looked great. Respawn took advantage of the Star Wars license and made sure that it agreed with the story they wanted to tell. It takes advantage of whatever lighting a particular planet or scene requires. The game opens up in a dimly lit scrapyard where the skyline's weather matches the scenery. Even in an opening sequence alone, when there are interactions with other characters, the light sources are just right so as not to ruin the overall design. In contrast, the first planet you visit is a well-lit outdoor environment with colors that match the current biome. So it's always a great mix of scenes where things don't become predictable. The amount of detail to each environment is also stunning, but always apt to the Star Wars setting. The character models are also excellent in the game. I mean, motion cap has really improved over the years to capture facial expressions. Cameron, the actor playing Cal Kestis, plays his role really well along with Deborah Wilson and the others. I mean, the video game industry is huge, and the actors have really lent their talent and blended well with the technology available. Facial animations are really good in expressing emotions like hesitation, mistrust, and relief in such a way that you are really connected to the game. Also in the visual space, I also want to highlight the combat aspect. This being a Star Wars game, the blaster and lightsaber effects are just great. In the gaming sense, if you wanted to imagine a Force user wielding a lightsaber or a stormtrooper taking shots at a target, this game translates it very well. Fans of the universe will really appreciate what was done to further immerse a player in the world or in the story of Cal Kestis. Connected to that, and jumping into the audio part, the sound effects are just great. Saber and blaster effects are what you know them to be, like in the movies. What I do like about the lightsaber effects is that it doesn't drown out other important sound effects. You can still make out sounds of a shot being fired at a good distance away, which gives you enough time to react. I mean, I often get hit anyway, but hey, at least I know I missed an opportunity to deflect a shot. For the music, I won't be able to sample that because I think the system will flag this video, but Respawn was able to at least give you hints of the musical score from the movies, but only a hint. The remaining background music appears to be original, or at least an original composition. If you're a hardcore fan of the world created by George Lucas, it won't disappoint. It still gives you the proper feels and is always just right. If it has to be a fight where you are going at it against stormtroopers or an inquisitor, you hear tense battle music. If it's a quiet moment where you're exploring or solving a puzzle, it's almost whisper quiet or unobtrusive, which gives you the space to be immersed or to just focus on figuring things out.
That's all. I wrote it. Years ago. You touch an object and witness events connected to it. You feel its history.
It's an echo in the force from the object.
Not many Jedi have that skill.
How would you know that?
I was once a Jedi, but not anymore.
Taking aim! See someone below! Watch where you aim! Watch out, or you'll be next! How did you kill them all? You won't get me like that! Come out and fight! Bring the pain!
Got a nice sound to it, don't you think?
The story of Fallen Order is original, but it does have that recurring Jedi theme in it. It may sound like something predictable, but in this case, it's alright. I mean, take for example the movie Top Gun Maverick. The premise and story are really simple. There's nothing complicated about it, but the way the movie was executed was pretty much perfect. People rooted for Mav and went with him on his journey. In the gaming space, one example I can use, although it's not a very good example, but it is an example nonetheless, is Assassin's Creed Odyssey. The mythos of the Greek setting that was being used isn't really surprising, and admittingly, it's been used over and over again. Now, minus the open world format that Ubisoft usually implements in their games, the story was executed pretty well in my opinion. It's the same for Fallen Order. Cal Kestis is a young Jedi that needs to grow and heal. You've seen that already in the trilogy movies, with some executed well and others showing multiple opportunities. The game isn't an open world in the sense of Cyberpunk, nor is it too enclosed in the vein of Plague Tale Innocence, but it has a Metroidvania format where it's very specific in terms of the places you can visit and mandatory revisit. The way Respawn tells the tale of this young Jedi makes sense. The revisits aren't awkward, and if you think about it, the scenery jumps from planet to planet is really something typical in these Star Wars movies. From a big picture view, Cal works his way to restore what was lost in such a way that it integrates nicely into the lore in the movies, but it isn't immediately galaxy-wide. If you think about Geralt in The Witcher 3, he wasn't really about changing the political landscape in his story, but he had his own personal goals. In maybe a smaller sense, Fallen Order feels the same. The journey of Cal may seem just his own story, but what he attempts to do in the game does have a potential impact on the Republic and Empire Wars or the Jedi and Sith conflict. Now, Cal has been on his own for a while after experiencing the Jedi Purge at a young age. The game narrates the adventure of a Force user who has been disconnected with the remains of the Jedi Order. It kicks into high gear pretty early on in the story, around the opening sequence. Cal experiences more loss and is immediately associated with people who he has to learn to trust. Now, generally, I do like the characters that Cal associates with, but there's one character in the group where I found this person to be a little bit oddly placed, and it felt like more interactions would have been better. The lack of interaction with that character appears to have been cut short mainly because of how the story progressed. It appears there wasn't enough time to grow the relationship between Cal and this particular companion. One more thing about the story is its ending. It was a bit open, and you can see that Respawn wasn't sure whether a second game was coming out. There was a lack of commitment to show that they did intend for Jedi Survivor to come out. Oh, and while on that ending, that ending sequence was really great, mainly because of how a main character in the movies just appeared out of nowhere. At least to me, I was surprised, but in a good way. While the gameplay involves a number of wall climbing, grabbing onto ropes so you can jump onto a ledge, like Uncharted or Tomb Raider, I think this should quickly describe what most of the gameplay is like. It's basically a toned-down Souls-like with a Metroidvania experience at the same time. Now, I'm normally wary of Souls-like games not because of the gameplay, but because most of the games from the genre have this weird creature and boss design concept. Well, they creep me out. Thankfully, it's easier to take in Fallen Order because, hey, it's in the Star Wars setting. Depending on the difficulty, parry timing becomes a thing, and health potion or stim count becomes an important thing to consider. Now, when I say Souls-like, you have the story mode option to make combat easier to take on. I honestly just switch to this mode when I have trouble or I'm just focused on finding my way back to a specific area. As with games like Remnant from the Ashes or other Souls games, meditation or bonfire points allow you to gain health, but it does respawn enemies. It's something you have to think about if you're playing on hard difficulty and want to do a bit more exploring. This is especially true if you are looking to explore areas you haven't visited. For those mandatory to the story, you will get skills and abilities that allow you to progress, which is typical, but there are also optional areas you aren't forced to check out. Here's where you want to think if gaining health at a save point is worth the hassle of seeing enemies pop up again. If you tone down difficulty settings, you'll just rampage through mobs, like I said, but if you're keen on staying in hard difficulty, you have to do a bit of deciding whether you should gain health at a save point or just make a pure save without restoring your health and your stem count. Another aspect is the puzzle solving. I'll be honest, I remember having difficulty in some of them when the game came out in 2019. There's not a lot of them in this game, but some of them do require completion if you want to progress the story. If you do find yourself in a tight spot, your buddy BD1 can provide hints, so you do have that option. You can press a keybind and Cal basically talks you through, without breaking the fourth wall, on how to beat a puzzle sequence. Now, I'm not sure if everyone will appreciate that, especially those who are veterans of the aspect or that aspect of gameplay. I mean, in games like Darksiders 2, you have a lot of puzzles there, but I don't recall being given hints on how to go about them. I mean, you can go back and check for solutions on the web, but, well, yeah, I'm on the fence on this one. Lastly, there are other aspects, but are pretty light. You have your typical skill tree, which you can allocate points to as you gain experience. Progressing the story unlocks additional skills. By the way, some of those new abilities you gain are pretty awesome. Now, they're not explosive like the game Force Unleashed, but they're pretty good for this game. You also have options to customize your appearance, BD1, and a few others. I mean, the real meat on a pure gameplay aspect are really on the combat being a reworked Souls experience and exploration of secrets outside of the main story. So I replayed this game to prepare for Jedi Survivors coming out next month, and I really hope there isn't a case for a last-minute delay. I mean, if they do it for the sake of quality, then that would be fine, I guess, but I'm pretty sure myself and other fans would be a bit disappointed. For now, I'll say Fallen Order was a great game in 2019, and I admit to having a better appreciation of it in my recent replay. It's a well-executed and contained experience. If you like the Star Wars lore, this is a great addition to the main storyline. From a gaming perspective, this is one finely crafted experience. Thanks for watching. Talk to you soon.